Hello, and welcome to Chapter 2 of The Quest for the Diamond Sword. I know it's been a while since the first part, but it blew up. It got 500 likes. That's a lot for my channel. So I'm going to read Chapter 2 now. Here we go. Chapter 2. Something goes wrong. Outside Steve's house, it was pitch dark, making it the perfect hour for hostile mobs to feast. The monsters had started to climb over the defensive walls surrounding the village and were swarming the buildings inside. Many of the torches Steve had placed throughout the village were gone. He saw a shallow pit in front of him and knew that a creeper must have exploded, destroying the lights and leaving the village in darkness. As Steve made his way out of his home, he gasped. A spider jockey was crawling up the wall of his house. The spider's red eyes glowed in the darkness as the skeleton sat on the aggressive arachnid. Steve knew that the spider jockeys were rare, could destroy him in seconds. The spider's vision was excellent, and the skeleton was a skilled hunter, which made a spider jockey a double threat. Steve felt his heart beating through his armor-clad body. He reached for his bow and arrow and took a deep breath. Within seconds, the skeleton spotted Steve and started to shoot. An arrow flew at Steve's chest but bounced off the armor. He sprinted away from the spider that leapt from the wall toward him. The skeleton's arrows came closer to Steve's unarmored legs. He ran as he narrowly avoided the arrows. Steve turned back and took aim at the spider, but wasn't able to kill the dreaded enemy as fast as he had hoped. As more arrows flew toward Steve, he dodged them swiftly. At the same time, he reloaded his bow and shot again at the spider. Steve knew it was important to kill the spider before the skeleton. If the spider were alone, without being weighed down by the bony skeleton, it could destroy him in an instant. Steve slowed down, and with a clear eye, he shot an arrow at the spider. Thunk! He hit the spider right in his belly. The creature fell to the ground as the skeleton launched a solo attack. With one more expert shot, Steve was able to take the skeleton down. He had defeated the spider jockey. He had never beaten such a tough enemy before. He grabbed the eye dropped by the spider and put it in his inventory, knowing to be useful later. Bursting with energy from the conquest of the spider jockey, Steve set off to the village to fight zombies with a bit more swagger in his step. Now he was a warrior. As he approached the village, Elliot the blacksmith ran past him toward his shop. "Help!" Elliot screamed. "You have the armor! You can beat the zombies!" Steve knew Elliot had faith in him, but did he realize how scared Steve was? Steve saw that a group of zombies surrounded a local village family. They tried to open the door to their home. The villagers tried to shield themselves, but the green, vacant-eyed zombies tore doors from homes, shops, and restaurants. They shattered glass windows and ripped roofs from small homes. There was no place to hide. He wanted to follow Elliot back to his shop, but he knew hiding was a cowardly choice. Steve looked for the pumpkin-headed iron golem that was nowhere to be found. He walked over to a patch of grass. There he saw a large iron body broken on the ground. Its pumpkin head lay next to the slain golem's mammoth feet. The reaper must have come into the village and killed it with the intention of harvesting its iron. He had no time to come up with theories on what had happened to the iron golem. Steve had a sea of zombies racing toward him. Seeking cover behind a large tree, he hoped he could hide from the zombies, yet he wasn't safe. There was a group of them making a quick approach. Steve charged them with his iron sword, destroying two instantly. After his battle with the spider jockey, he felt confident he won this fight quickly. He was wrong. Every minute, more zombies spawned. The injured zombies called for reinforcement, and Steve was quickly outnumbered. He knew his armor could protect him while he battled. The sheer volume of zombies made him doubt that he could win. Steve's swords were wearing out. His first iron sword was worn out and broken earlier in the fight, and now his last one was almost useless as well. It's getting intense. Steve worried about the villagers. What if he couldn't defeat the zombies? Would all the villagers be turned into zombie villagers? For all of the items Steve had saved, he didn't have a potion of weakness. He didn't even have enough time to craft an enchantment. Enchanted golden apple? 2 items necessary to cure a zombie villager. Perhaps he could create an iron gate and put any zombie villager behind it as a temporary jail. This would keep them from hurting him while he defeated the zombies, but time wasn't on Steve's side. He had to just keep fighting and hope he could figure out a way to save his villagers. Steve went back into his inventory and switched to a bow and arrow. As he shot arrows at the zombies, he was able to knock out a few, but they had an army. Bow and arrow was no match for a platoon of the Walking Dead. Steve needed another plan. He thought of leading the zombies to the ocean or a cliff, as he knew they weren't too smart. He could probably trick them into running right off the cliff or drowning. He wasn't even sure if the zombies could drown though. He was trapped in the village anyway, with these bloodthirsty zombies who were quickly outnumbering the villagers. To make matters worse, each villager who succumbed to a zombie attack instantly transformed into a zombie villager. Steve saw the village butcher, still dressed in his white apron, but now turned monstrously green and rotten, pushing at another zombie at the back of the crowd that continued to attack him. Steve's old villager friends were now zombies, ready to destroy the one person who was trying to save and protect them. It was a losing battle. Steve took a chance and raced toward the zombies. He shot at them with his bow, taking them down quickly so they didn't have a chance to call in reinforcements. Just when he thought he had won the battle, he saw one more zombie in the distance. As the lone zombie walked toward Steve, he shook in sheer terror. He had enough excitement for one night, and despite his heroics, he was still scared. His hand quivered while he fumbled with the bow. He could barely shoot an arrow. When he finally did, the arrow traveled slowly through the air and fell next to the zombie. The arrow crunched beneath the zombie's feet as he closed in on Steve. Steve felt his heart beating in his chest, but he couldn't let fear dominate his desire to save his friends. Then Steve heard Elliot the blacksmith call for help. He knew a zombie must be cornering Elliot. Steve couldn't let him down. He needed courage and strength. Steve put away the bow and arrow and grabbed the most powerful gold sword from his inventory. He cradled the sword with his fist. The powerful zombie grabbed the sword from Steve's hands and snapped the weapon in half. It dropped the sword on the grass and reached for Steve. With no time left to get a weapon from his inventory, he was defenseless. Steve began to sprint away from the enormous green-eyed creature of the night. He raced through familiar streets of the village, ran into Elliot's blacksmith shop, and slammed the door behind him. He figured that if he traded emeralds, he could get a new sword to defeat the zombie. But it was too late. Elliot the blacksmith was defeated and was spawning into a zombie. He had failed his friend. Steve was devastated and felt useless. Elliot was turning into a zombie, and Steve stood and stared in fear at his friend. Steve was heartbroken. He had spent so much time trading and talking with Elliot, but he was now an enemy. He could hear Avery the librarian calling for help in the distance. He already let one villager friend down. He couldn't let it happen again. Steve had to get to Avery's library. Thud. Crap. He heard the door being ripped apart by the menacing zombie. He plotted an escape. Steve grabbed a pickaxe from his inventory and dug a hole in the ground. As he dug deeper, he could hear the door being ripped from its hinges. Once the zombie set foot in the shop, Steve crawled out through the bottom of the shop and into the center of town. Emerging from the hole, he was cornered by a gang of zombies. Somehow, Steve was able to weave his way through the zombies and run out of the village. But the zombie mob followed closely behind. Avery's cries grew louder, and Steve knew he had to return to the village, but it was impossible. Looking back, he could see the zombies were close behind. He shot arrows while he ran, striking a few of his enemies. As he made his way through the dark night, he tried to find a place to hide. But then he was cornered. He could make out a cave in the distance, although Steve was terrified of caves and had never been in one before. He was hoping he could hide there and find water to attack the horde of zombies. They were getting closer, so Steve ran faster towards the cave. One zombie was inches from Steve's back. As it stepped closer, Steve trembled with fear, accidentally letting his chest plate fall off. Steve tried to pick it up, but with a strong grasp, the zombie yanked the plate from Steve's hands and put the armored plate on its own chest. The zombie called out to his gang. The chest plate transformed this ordinary zombie into an even more powerful zombie. Since he was armored and couldn't be attacked, he also had an armored helmet, which meant unlike other zombies, he could live in daylight, although the others would burn in the sun. The armored zombie leapt at Steve. He jumped back. Unarmored, Steve knew there was only one way to escape. He spent the morning mining, and he had run into an area with lava and waters, so he had enough obsidian in his bag to make a frame. He quickly stacked the jet black blocks together, and when he lit them on fire, purple mist rose through the air. Steve's portal to the nether was complete. With a glance back to his village, Steve turned and made his escape from the zombie attack and into the nether. That's the end of chapter 2. That was an intense chapter. So, yeah, thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe so you can see the next chapters as they come out. I'm going to be posting more regularly than every year